apply for traffic calming grant. And that generally means that if you win, or if you are accepted, you get a grant. There are any number of ways that NDOT and folks that they hire can calm the traffic. Main way is speed cushions, but there are other options. Each street is different, and the purpose of tonight is to hear from you all, especially those of you that are on Woodlawn or very near Woodlawn, to find out what you see as a problem, what solution you would like, and see if there's support for those kinds of measures, those kind of tools. This is Jeff Hammond with Birch and Ellie. Is that right? Yes, Ellie. Jeff used to work for NDOT and is now in the private sector and doing great things. He and I used to talk about sidewalks a lot, and so he's here to present to you all and get your feedback. And you want to talk about the kind of the overall process, or you want me to go ahead and?
I will be.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Good.
Yep. And the sign is going around, so we have contact info for people later on.
Great. Well, thank you, Councilman Cash, and thank all of you for taking your time to be with us tonight. I'm Jeff Hammond. This is Ellie, and we are recording. You may have seen the little thing pop up. So I'll be recording this meeting, and that's why I'm talking into this funny microphone that makes it a little bit clearer. So if you got neighbors that weren't able to be here tonight, this will be made available. They can tune in and watch the same thing that you're seeing now. Some people may be tuning in live, and if so, Ellie's monitoring our online portion of the meeting. So as people join, if they have questions, they're free to ask them. So if you all have a question, I may kind of hold the microphone up just so you're heard in that recording. We're here to talk about Woodlawn. We're not here to talk about sidewalks, unfortunately. Everybody would like more sidewalks. But we hope this is somewhat of a relief type of a project, and we'll talk about that. So we're here to talk about traffic calming, and I'm going to cover three main topics. One is like was mentioned, an overview of the project and process and why Woodlawn is in this program at this point. Secondly, we'll show you a very preliminary concept for what we think we would put on the street, get some feedback from you on that. And then the third thing is just some information about next steps that you can expect. We want to set some expectations in terms of time frame and what some of the upcoming steps in this process are. Feel free as we get into things. I'll stop before we go to each of those next sections, but feel free to stop me anytime and ask questions. I think I skipped something already here. I didn't mean to do that. Well, anyway, that first slide talks about 3 E's that we often use, and those are education, enforcement, and engineering. Education is a big part of what we do. Obviously, if people don't know the speed limit or for some reason don't have a sense of how fast they should be driving in your neighborhood, that might cause them to speed. So education is one component. I'll show you a couple of tools we have that deal with that part. Secondly is enforcement, and we get this question a lot. Why can't Metro just park a few cruisers out there, write some tickets every so often, and wouldn't that solve the problem? And it would help, no doubt about it. Enforcement is a big part of getting people to drive the speed limit and to drive their car safely. Unfortunately, as I'm sure you all know, MNPD's got a big job to do, and they don't have the resources often to do that and enforce traffic the way we might like them to, but they're a great partner in this program. They're certainly aware and supportive of things that we are doing. And what we are doing is engineering. So NDOT, the Nashville Department of Transportation, has as its almost sole purpose to administer the right-of-way, our public streets. And so that is something that they control. They can, change that right-of-way, build sidewalks, put in traffic calming, put in traffic signals, all of those types of things. That's what they do. And so that's why we're here in this program. Those are some things that we can change. This program focuses on residential streets. We don't do much with streets that are in industrial areas or, those types of things. We really focus on places where it really is impacting neighbors and their quality of life, the speeding and all that's happening. We do focus on physical solutions. That's really as opposed to some of those educational tools that we have in our toolbox. Those can be effective, but we know nothing is as effective as putting something in the street that traffic has to encounter, to drive over, to drive around. We find that to be by far the most effective type of a solution to lower speeds. And we are focused on speed reduction. That sounds obvious, but sometimes people will engage this program and say, we would like to apply in because we don't want so much traffic on our street. We don't really try to move traffic off of the street because we just know that pushes it somewhere else. Cars are going to go where they need to go. We just want them to drive through your neighborhood responsibly, slower and more responsibly. So that's what we're focused on in this program. Here's our 3 E's. I'm just out of order. One of the things we like to talk about as a rationale behind this program and a lot of the safety efforts that NDOT is engaged in right now is the fact that there are other users on the street, and we're seeing that more and more all the time. So sometimes people engage this program actually because they don't feel safe walking. They don't feel safe, using the street for anything other than driving. You all have sidewalks, so you're fortunate, at least on one side of the street, you're fortunate in that regard. A lot of the streets that we work on don't even have that. And so you can imagine when cars are this far from you going 40 miles an hour, that's a pretty harrowing experience. And so we like to talk about the safety impact, particularly to more of those vulnerable users of our roads, because we know if we can slow speeds from 45 down to 25, if, God forbid, there is an incident where there is a pedestrian crash, you've got a much higher chance of walking away from that crash, or at least surviving that crash if those speeds are down in that 25 mile an hour range. So that's a big part of why we do so much of what we do. And this is not just a Nashville issue. Nationally, it's a real hot topic in our industry of traffic engineering that pedestrian safety is on the rise, and it's a real issue around the country. This is a program that is very much in demand. You are not alone, so you all have applied into this program, and so have a lot of other people. In this last year in the cohort that was selected a few months ago, at the time you all applied in, we have over 400 streets that are just like this one that also have applied in and say, can you come do something about the speed of traffic on our streets? Just to put that in context, we're doing about 50 projects a year. We do 2 application windows a year, 25 in each. And so it's a big backlog to work through. There are a number of streets in the queue still, and we're working through those. But I guess congratulations, you were selected. Not really. I wish you didn't have to be, but anyhow, it is very much in demand. What happens is when all of these applications come in from the neighborhoods, we take all of those streets and then we go out and we collect data. We collect speed data, traffic volume, how much traffic is on the street. And then we look at some other metrics as well that have to do with that aspect of people walking and making trips by something other than car. And we score all of that. And so 70% of the score that we use to prioritize all of these 400 some odd requests have to do with traffic. That's the speed that we've measured, and that's the volume of traffic. That's the biggest chunk of the point value in our system. The other 30% are those non-motorized considerations, like, do you have sidewalks? You all do. Your score actually went down a little bit because of that. Do you have places to walk to? Are there shopping destinations? You all have those there on 21st, just in the form of offices and commercial properties. Is there transit nearby? You've got 2 transit lines running up and down 21st Avenue. Are there parks? Are there schools? Are there things that would make people want to make a walking trip? So that's part of it. And then there's 10% of that has to do with, has there been a documented incident between a pedestrian? So that counts as part of the score as well. We roll all of that up and we take the top 25 or so. You all were in that for this latest round, and so we've agreed, NDOT, the city has agreed to do a traffic calming project. We'll talk about the steps to go and do that and how that actually comes to be. So the scope of the project is on Woodlawn from 21st to Natchez Trace, there at the Always Stop. and just a little bit of data about the data that was collected. This was changed. I'm not sure how recently this one went to 25 miles an hour, but it is posted at 25. The 85th percentile speed, which is just a complicated way that engineers have chosen to look at this, is 36. That just means that 15% of the traffic is going faster than 36. It's kind of that level at which we say, okay, that's a significant number of people. So we consider that to be a speeding issue. The volume is pretty high. I think right now, loosely, our cutoff is about 5,000 cars a day. You're right up there. You're at 4,700 cars a day. Sometimes we say those numbers and people are like, golly, I didn't know we had that much traffic on the street, but it is significant. And the street width is about 21 feet. That's pretty typical. That's a little on the narrow side, which is actually good when we're talking about traffic calming. For us, narrower almost always means better. If you think about some of these, Waverly, Belmont, and those are close to Belmont, when you got a lot of cars parked on the side of the street, how constrained and narrow that feels. Often those, they may feel crowded and they may not be very comfortable, but you don't see as much speeding on those streets. And so often the narrower the street, the better off you are. You probably can't see this from where you're sitting, but we like to show it. This is just a map of the area. Woodlawn, the segment that we're looking at, this is Woodlawn here, the green one, and we're going from 21st to Natchez Trace. This is an interactive map that is available on Metro's website. We're going to give you a link to that at the end. You can also just Google Nashville traffic calming is what I do. And one of the options is this map. And the reason we like to show it is because of this color coding. The green lines, this is Sharondale, kind of your twin on the other side of 440. The green lines are streets that we are engaged on currently. So the project's not done, but you're in the program and we're working on it. The purple lines are streets that we've got an application on. Someone has applied for those. We've collected data on those, but it has not risen to that level of the top 25. So if you've got a neighbor that says, hey, what about this street? I've noticed it for whatever, you can go here and see, do we already know about it and have an application in on it? That might be helpful. And then you see these blue lines. Some are solid, some are dashed. The solid ones have already had a traffic calming project on it, but it's not a raised thing. So we're going to talk about speed cushions and speed humps, and that's kind of what this program is known for. A solid line just means that you don't have that. Something has been done, but not that. Dashed lines, like you see there, means there is some sort of a raised device, and so that can be helpful if you haven't driven over those in Nashville and you want to kind of go see what they're all about and drive it. You can look on this map and find a place where it might be convenient for you to go do that and kind of test them out. So before I show you the very tentative concept plan, I want to kind of define some things that we're going to talk about. So these are the more common tools in our toolbox. The first one is speed cushions, and as I mentioned, this is kind of the bread and butter of our program. So if you think about traffic calming as a speed cushion program, that's fair. We do almost every project has this as a component of it. Really, almost every project is pretty much solely these. We throw in some other tools as well, but you're going to see these again. This is what the spoiler alert is this is what we have planned for Woodlawn as well, but we'll talk about that and we want to get your reaction to it. So a little bit about the speed cushions. They are separate little pads. I guess that's why they get the name cushion. There's gaps in the middle. These are just pre-molded recycled rubber, very dense. It's not squishy or anything. They come in, we buy them from the same vendor. So what you see on one street is what you'll get on this street. They do a combination of an epoxy and a bolt, mechanical fastener, and they just come in and bolt them down. The installation would probably do this project in a day. It doesn't take very long. There's a couple of different patterns on pavement markings. We can do them 2 wide. We can do them 3 wide. We're working over by 10th Avenue South. That street's so wide on South Douglas, so we're looking at 4 wide. So we can configure them however we need to. The point there is we don't want people to drive around them. And we know if we give them room to do that, they will drive around them. They will leave the road at times to drive around these sometimes. So the way we counter that, we use signs sometimes and back those up and put them right at. People don't want to hit a steel sign. We use these delineators. You guys are familiar with those. They're around here. Belmont's got a ton of them. 10th has a ton of them. So sometimes we'll place those. I don't think we're going to need any of that on this street. The street here is narrow enough. What we would be looking at is a pretty standard application of 2 pads, one kind of in the center of each lane. They're only about 3 inches tall. That surprises people, but that's enough to be effective. The other thing that we can't change the height of them. We can't change the width of them, which is 6 feet. We can change the length of them, and that's one of the design tools that we have. The shorter it is, the more aggressive it is. We typically reserve those for some of our more dense areas, and then the longer it is, 10.5 feet up to 14 feet. It just gives a little more gradual. It's more comfortable, but it also allows you to go a little faster over them. So there's kind of a give and take on that. Yes, sir.
You know, I live in a where you got tons of those speed cushions. And I've also seen the signs that say speed humps. Why not just make them yellow, and then you might not have to put the signs in?
Oh, the unit themselves. Yeah. One reason the first reason that comes to mind is they don't make them in yellow. Now they make one that has a lot of yellow markings on them that might be a little more visible. That's just the pattern Metro has gone with, just for consistency. So what you see in one neighborhood is like the other. But they do sign these. If we can talk more about this, but if there's a set of speed cushions, anytime there's an intersecting road in between them, they usually sign it. So they don't want someone turning off a road and not being informed that there's a set of speed cushions. If there's just a series of them with no intersecting streets, they'll only sign the first and last, if that makes sense. But signage is a part of this. The reason why there's a gap in them, sometimes people will ask, is really an emergency vehicle consideration. So a larger wheelbase vehicle like an ambulance, fire truck, is not as affected by them. I'm not going to say they're not slowed at all, but they can straddle those a little easier. You probably can't tell it from where you are, but there's a break point out toward the edge where it tapers back down, so they can get over those a little faster. Those are the types of vehicles we want them to get to where they're going and with the important job that they have to do. The cousin of those is the speed table. It's pretty much the same thing without the gap in the middle. We don't use these often. There are some occasions where these are being used, but again, we can modify the length of them in the direction of traffic. Otherwise, it's pretty much the same tool. We are collecting data, and so Metro staff has got some data and get more all the time. They're effective. I mean, that's all you can say. The data is saying it's a change of somewhere in the 8 to 9 mile an hour on average reduction. But it has to do a lot with the street, how closely they're spaced, is there curves, whatever. So it just kind of proves what most people see is that, by and large, they're effective. They're not foolproof. I'm not going to say every car is now going to slow down and drive responsibly. Some people will still drive quickly over them, but by and large, we did see a pretty substantial reduction in the speeds on the street. Another tool that we have is a little different than that. This one is not a raised device. It's more in that education category. And you've probably seen some of these, just feedback signs, where when you're driving up to them, there's a radar there, and it will show you your speed that you're doing. So again, some data is being collected, showing that they're effective. I think there's some longevity questions there. If it goes up within 2 months, I'm sure it is effective. Does that last over a course of years? And also, we continue to look at that. But that is an option sometimes. And a lot of times we'll use these where we can't use speed cushions. We don't use speed cushions where there's big hills or curves or a lot of driveways that we just can't, we're not going to put these right in front of someone's driveway. So sometimes this becomes kind of a replacement if we've got a gap, just to remind people that, hey, you're going kind of fast here. You may want to slow down.
Data is being collected on using that in general, or those devices collect data?
Both. those devices will collect data. There's something called stealth mode where you can actually turn them off so that feedback is not going back, with the theory that, you know, if you show somebody their speed, they're going to slow down. So if we're collecting data, we may want to turn that off. And so anyway, they will collect data, but yeah, then that data is being recorded and then kind of analyzed to say, is this an effective solution given the conditions here?
Are they compared to speed systems?
They're not as effective. Yeah, so the average there is more like 6 miles an hour or something like that, as opposed to 8 or 9 or more. Another tool that we have sometimes, sort of educational, sort of just trying to trick people, is to kind of visually narrow the street. We can do that by adding edge lines. Sometimes we use center line markings, and so again, it's not putting something in the road, but does give the appearance or communicate the idea that it might be a narrower street. Traffic circles are a great tool that we don't use very often at all. The conditions have to be right for this. And so a lot of times with school buses and things like that, it's just hard to navigate these. There are some around the county. Yes, sir. Yeah, Elmo's got one. So anyway, they have their place where NDOT's just really not using many of them right now. And one reason is you got to have a pretty good amount of pavement to do that, you know, a lot of room there. So anyway. Bulb outs, chicanes we're familiar with. We go all over the county talking about chicanes, and I always have to mention Fairfax. You know, here we are on the project. It and Kenner sort of has this, but those are the only 2 streets that I know of in Davidson County that have something like that. And the idea there, of course, is, you know, kind of foster a meandering sense. It works great if there's more cars parked. There's often not a lot of parked cars here on Fairfax, so we're not doing much of that. Bulb outs we use occasionally, again, especially where you've got a big wide intersection with a lot of pavement, people turning corners quickly. The idea there is if we can just shorten that turning radius up, make it feel a little tighter. You know, you go downtown and some of those intersections, you just crawl around them because everything's just very tight down there. It kind of replicates that.
Some of those you have on Belmont, you're turning on Belmont from the side street, they are so close that driving lane that your car has to go over the yellow line to make the turn.
To even make the turn.
And that's how you see that when they're knocked down.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have a measurement of the radius on average wheelbase car, but that is a real problem on Belmont. Yeah,
it certainly can, especially with, you know, FedEx trucks and garbage trucks and bigger cars like that. They are going to off track more, and they can take those posts down. And I don't think FedEx cares one way or the other. You know, they've got a job to do, and they're going to do it. Occasionally, it has to do kind of with the lane width, but you know, in downtown, you may have turn radiuses that are as short as 15 feet. That would be a very tight turn. Most of them, you know, it's hard to say. Everything was kind of built differently, but 20 to 22, 25 feet. You get out in more suburban areas and they start getting really big, 40 feet, you know, 45-foot turn radius. It just feels huge, you know, and so those are the ones we really target. And then there were projects like Belmont, you know, that had a you know, pretty aggressive bicycle approach, and it was really to slow down. And so some of those have been brought, you know, into more urban areas like this.
Part of the development is that street and the other parts of the area, the cross streets on the line. You know, and there were a lot of people that were like going across, so they had to cut to the right or left to get to the streets that they were going across to, and so they were kind of not paying close attention to kind of starting across but having to do it diagonally.
Yeah.
And slowing that down and having people who were intentional or thoughtful or careful about how they would cross it. Belmont.
Right. Returning off of Belmont, we heard a lot of stories about you're sitting there trying to make a left turn off of Belmont and somebody comes around you and passes you on the shoulder and all kind of stuff, you know, so just undesirable driving. Couple of other issues. Some people ask about stop signs or sidewalks and those types of things. There are resources. We are not the program to do that, but we always like to plug Hub Nashville here to talk about, you know, anytime you have a service request, something you'd like for the city to look at, hub.Nashville.gov is a great resource if you haven't been on that. And that's not just DOT issues, just about any metro department is there. So any request. It can be. It can be anonymous.
Like if I reported you for being a bad person.
Yeah, right. Maybe you should.
And then you'd say, well, that guy right over there, you know? What is the
So like if you're reporting a codes issue or something, you're on a neighbor, no, I'm almost certain there's an anonymous way to do that. And so you can tell them who you are or not. And so if you don't, like in a transportation case, if you say, I can't see coming out of my driveway or whatever, if you don't tell them, they have no way to contact you. That's the only downside. But if, you can choose to do it anonymously. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with the term feeder streets?
I maybe, depends on what context you mean.
I live on Natchez Trace,
Okay.
and it is considered a feeder street.
Yeah, we call them collectors, but yeah.
Collectors. It is very common. Speed limit on that road is 25 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
It is very common to have many, every day, cars doing 40, 50, and 60 miles an hour, including school buses.
Mm-hmm.
Is a stop sign or the speed bumps or something just not something that would be considered?
I'm glad you brought that up. So Woodlawn is also a collector street, and that's not just me saying, that's an official designation put forth by the Metro Planning Department. So if you go on their website, you'll see Woodlawn is a collector. Natchez Trace, I assume, I'll take your word for it, it's also a collector. Up until this latest round, NDOT did not traffic calm collectors by and large. Occasionally they would, but it had to be a pretty different circumstance. This time, we're doing a lot of collectors, okay? And so now the cutoff is not what classification it is, because we got a lot of pushback from people saying, I may live on a collector, but it's very residential. You guys are all residential. Your houses may be set back far, those kind of things, but it's a feeder street. It's meant to carry more traffic, and it does. So when we talk about this street carries 4,700 cars a day, the cutoff now, like I mentioned, is about 5,000. So that's more of what is being looked at as, we're going to try to look at something other than traffic calming when the volumes get really high. And so Natchez Trace may be above that 5,000. I don't know what the traffic. So that's why I say maybe. If the traffic volume is much higher than that, they may look at it and say, maybe we'll do feedback signs, maybe we'll change it. We'll try something, but we're probably not going to do.
We haven't tried anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can't speak to it. I don't know. I could look back and see if that map, if there's even an application on it to be looked at. I don't know. Right.
The eligibility has changed.
Yeah.
We did a section between Blair and Fairfax. We reduced the number of lanes. Was that when we did this walking distance? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we narrowed the lanes, which is a little something. But
yeah.
You're right, and part of it's that coming north on Natchez Trace, you got a hill coming down. That's probably what caused some of it. But we'll keep working on that.
Okay. Can I ask you a question
Sure.
about Woodlawn here? You stopped, personally, you stopped at Natchez Trace.
Right.
From 21st. Now, Susan and I live between Natchez Trace and the 440 bridge. Now, my thing is, I'm prepared to say, why don't you go from 21st to Sharondale? And I think Sharondale is in somebody else's district, I think.
It's also being traffic calm. It's a project we're working on right now.
Which one's that? Sharondale?
Sharondale. Both, but Sharondale. I'll show you. So this is the segment. So you're talking about this piece. This is the segment we're doing. This is the segment we're doing. We're not doing that.
Yes, and also extending it over to over the bridge to Sharondale. And my question, I'm really fired up on this, but I mean, I'll be a nice guy.
Yeah.
But the deal is that what happens at the Sharondale stop sign the bridge on that side of 440. So then what happens is those cars speed by there. Then coming from the turn from Natchez Trace onto Woodlawn, which would be taking a right to go over the 440 bridge.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like NASCAR again, going to Sharondale. Now, the other part is, I agree with you 100%, everybody, on what you got green up there, but I do object to not having green at least stretched in Tom's district, because that's who we have here, to go to Woodlawn, the bridge there at 440, because I tell you, it's crazy.
The council district doesn't necessarily matter because it's Hillsborough West End that made the application, and it's in Hillsborough West End.
Yes.
You could do that, absolutely.
And let me ask you a question. Okay, you know, I live over on 21st and Woodlawn, or I'm in the enclave, you know, and now you've got two stops out there. You got the one on Natchez Trace, and you got the other one in Sharondale.
Right.
I mean, how long is that stretch of road?
Long enough to see them.
Long enough to go 30, 40 miles an hour.
If there ain't a lot of
And then, well, there's a lot of traffic backs up from Natchez Trace or down to, what is it, Lakemore, Vanderbilt, from Vanderbilt letting out on whatever it is. I've been here for 47 years and still don't know what name. But the thing is that they go all the way down there all the way down Natchez Trace from, let's say, Vanderbilt's football stadium, all the way to down Natchez Trace. They get to Woodlawn. I'm talking about back up.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then from Woodlawn, it's backed up all the way to West End where the Walgreens is.
At 31st.
We sit out there with our cocktails and wave at everybody, you know, like, you know, it's okay.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But what I'm getting at is, my concern is, get rid of all this flamboyant stuff. My thing is that section there from Natchez to the bridge.
I think it's a great observation. We've got two different traffic calming projects with only not connected by this little piece. It's something that we can go back and check in with Metro on and say, hey, it makes a great point. What, you know, should we look at this other piece? I will tell you, they're pretty hesitant to changing the limits of these once they get in the program, but we can certainly make the case. Yeah. I mean, they may want to go out and measure data. I don't know exactly where the data was collected. It would have been, our speed data that was collected will have been in the piece that was requested between Natchez Trace and 21st. So I can't speak definitively on what the speed is. I don't know if they'll want to do that. Yeah. So we'll check. I think it's a good observation. I mean, yeah, it is. And so, like, one thing, like you just heard, people kind of ignore them sometimes. But the other thing is what really drives it is there's federal guidelines on when you should use these, and stop signs, it explicitly says in a big manual that we all go by, they're not to be used for speed control. And so the way we check that is there's warrants, there's traffic volume warrants for the amount of traffic going through an intersection, and you have to be at a certain level before that manual kind of says an always stop, which is what we're talking about, is a good idea. Without that, engineers are really hesitant to put that in, you know, just for liability issues and ignoring issues and all of that kind of stuff. If you go through a stop sign and you never see traffic on that side street, it's kind of human nature. You're at least going to roll through it. You may kind of ignore it. So. Yeah. I know we hear that a lot, but it's just not a tool we can do. Yes, sir. It's just not a tool we have in our toolbox for that reason.
I think we're going to be most impacted by this traffic content. Are the people who are coming through once or a few times a month, but all of us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And when I look at all the purple lines, and I look and tell me that they're all the subject of potential traffic calming measures, the one that's used most frequently are these humps.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just concerned concerned that driving around our neighborhood is going to feel like we're on a bumpy road throughout the entire trip. And we know that's uncomfortable, it's unpleasant. So the way I look at it is it's almost like a carrot and stick approach. The humps are stick, not a big stick, but a bit of a stick. The feedback is a bit of a carrot for people who may be going a little bit too fast, whether they're from the neighborhood or not, get that feedback. And you said that it doesn't slow the traffic down as much as the speed bumps, but it does slow it down. And when you mentioned the 85% being 46 miles an hour or 36, 25 miles an hour, that would bring it down potentially down to 30, which is not egregiously fast or reckless in a 25 mile an hour zone. So I'm just trying to think about the impact it's going to have on our day-to-day lives and whether or not we may want to take the first step using a carrot and only refer to the stick with it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have a good way to do an iterative approach. I don't disagree. That would be a great way to do it just because of resources. You know, we don't have time to put something out, see the effectiveness, come back if we don't like it, change it, and all that kind of stuff. But your point is well taken in that it's not for everybody, and there is some inconvenience, and that's kind of the nature of putting these out. And so that's why we'll have 2 meetings like this one. This is the first one. We'll have another one. And we go to a formal ballot where we put it to the people and say, okay, you guys, you're right. You're the most impacted, but you guys are also the most impacted by the speeding. That's why we don't ask the whole neighborhood and we don't ask people that live off of it because they would get the brunt of they may drive over the speed cushions just as much as you all would, but they don't see the day-to-day speeding like most of you do who live on the corridor. So we kind of take the position we're here at your service. If it's something you like and you want us to proceed with, we're here to talk about that and what it looks like, and then ultimately we get to as close a consensus as we can get, and we put it to you in the form of a ballot, and you tell us what you want to do. Yes, ma'am.
But when you were talking about the reduction in accidents and deaths with accidents, we're in a neighborhood that could have more kids walking to school. It could have more people biking, and it's just not safe enough as the drivers who are not just going there. We were kids from behind one who stopped because somebody was messing with his phone.
Yeah. Sure.
Something could be happening, and that
it could. Yeah. Good point. Well, I want to show you what we've got, what we're thinking about. It's not very exciting. I'll just tell you. I mean, like doesn't seem. It's 3 sets of speed cushions. So here's how we come up with this. We look at the length of the project. So this is something, I don't remember exactly, maybe it's 1,700 feet from Natchez Trace, which is over where the little stop sign is, over to 21st, which is where the little traffic signal is. You see the black little signal there? We look at that distance. We look at where the intersecting streets are. And what we're looking for is something like 400 to 600 feet apart. We know if we can do that, it doesn't feel obnoxious. It doesn't feel like you're hitting these things so often that it pushes traffic somewhere else. At the same time, that's close enough that people don't really have enough distance to clear one set of cushions, step on the gas, and just fly to the next one. Most people will drive that at a pretty consistent, slow speed. They just don't find it to be worth it to speed through. Again, not everybody. They'll still have kids or whoever it is might still do that, but by and large, most traffic drive that in a way that we find these to be successful. So the distance there and those intersecting streets and all, it kind of leads us to, we think, about 3 sets of these along that distance is probably what we would do in terms of a traffic calming project. Again, that would be 2 side by side, and it's going to be at least a 10.5 foot. It may be, because of the volume of traffic, we may opt for the 14-foot cushion on this one, so it's going to be a little more comfortable, as you drive over it. What do you think? I mean, are we close? Yes, ma'am.
Do you factor in, there's a downside
We do. Yeah, we do. Good point. And I can't say that we have at this point. So this is all based on desktop. I mean, we drive it. We're from here. We know what it looks like. The next step will be we'll actually go out in the field and we'll measure that. So we use levels. We don't put these on any slope that's steeper than 8%. We really don't hardly ever do it more than 6%. So we do look at the slope of hills like that, make sure that if we can, we're off of that. So these can adjust. They'll adjust based, like I said, on driveways. You don't have any curves to drive around, so we're good in that regard. But yeah, we stay away from intersections, driveways, hills, curves, those types of things. So we will definitely look at that. That's a good point.
I don't know if this was like an approximation, but looking at the far left one, and that looks like right in front of my house, which I will just say that I am for putting something on there and pulling people down, because even though we have sidewalks, I feel like the car is just going to fight me at any moment. There's no center on the street, and they do fly through there. But I do also want to get in and out of my driveway without having to go over.
Right.
So I'm just kind of curious as to where that location is for the park.
Yeah. So the far west or left one, this is 27th Avenue here. I know it's kind of small for what you're seeing. What we try to do, our minimum is really about 15 feet. We don't want to do anything within 15 feet of a driveway. My hunch is in this neighborhood, you guys have a little more frontage. Some of these streets don't have driveways. I mean, some of these houses don't even have driveways. Isn't that right? So that gives us a little more room. I don't think we'll have a problem with meeting driveways. We get as far away from them as we can. So often what we'll do is we'll kind of split the difference between the closest driveways and get them as far as we can away. We look at also your front door. I don't know. I mean, you guys are sitting back off the road enough. It probably is not a big deal, but for whatever reason, we like to put these as close as we can to property lines, like in between houses. That tends to be further away from just some of the stuff we look at. If we can line it up with a power pole, that seems to be a good thing from a sign placement standpoint. So we'll look at all of that kind of stuff, but right, we don't want you driving over them, going in and out of your driveway either. We like to keep that as far away as we can. So what we will do with this, just so you'll know and you'll be clear on what we're proposing, when we go out to the field, I don't have an example with me, but we will develop a much more specific design plan, and it'll have notes on there that says this speed cushion would be placed 27 feet from the driveway at 1201 Woodlawn, whatever it is, so you would be able to see that and know exactly where these would be placed. You will have that much information, and that design plan will go on the website as well in coordination with that ballot activity. So anyone who may not have been to these meetings, may know nothing about this, but they get that card in the mail and they're allowed to vote, they can go and pull up those plans and see exactly what we're proposing. Did you have a hand up?
I didn't hear you mention rumble strips, and I'm sure there must be an application for which they're perfect. Is that off the table here? I'm just curious. And then
I would say pretty much yes, off the table. It's not to say we don't use them in Metro and they can't be a good tool, but in this program, we don't use them. Going back to when we first started, one of our objectives is to calm the entire length of the street. Okay, so when we put these in here, our goal is to just get a good, consistent speed all the way down. Rumble strips are great when you've got an acute issue. Maybe it's a crosswalk. Maybe it's something you really want to draw attention to at that one spot. That's where rumble strips are really more effective, in bringing someone's attention. We're not going to do rumble strips all down the length of this, I guess the other question is just, the effectiveness of them. The other thing that kind of is bothersome to people often in more urban areas particularly is they rumble. They make noise. They make noise at midnight. They make noise at 2 in the morning. So they can be kind of a nuisance to people who live near them.
Is looking at the prior map that had 21st down the middle,
with the purple streets over here,
Mm-hmm.
and then 21st to the east with the blue, solid and dotted on the right, on the east. So on the east, I'm seeing kind of a holistic street approach where several streets are addressed at once. And on the west side, it's one here, and then there are more.
Oh.
And so, and you are coming up here eventually, I think, Fairfax, that's a bit, but there's a lot of residential streets in between, some of which do have applications in. So I'm curious if this is addressed, which it looks like it's on its way to being addressed, does that help our other residential streets in getting something else that will help and not just drive the traffic to these other streets?
Yeah, it's a really good point. From a policy level, no, it doesn't help. We look at each of these independently. Right now, the program as it exists today is strictly data-based. We look at the data. If one of those other streets, let me just go back to that map. If one of those other streets in this next go-round pop up as one of our high achievers, or it would go and the other ones wouldn't. Right now, we just go strictly with what the data says. So I'm sorry I don't know if you can see around the flags and all, but yeah, I mean, and it's very possible. I can't speak totally authoritatively here, but my hunch is you're right. That was done at a time where the program did look more at the neighborhood as a whole. And what we were finding, I mean, there's different issues, but it just gets to be we can serve a whole lot fewer neighborhoods when we're doing 4 streets at a time, is when we're just getting those streets that we know are the worst offenders. Well, yeah, they're just done it under different kind of policies and all, but you may have more insight.
They show that, like, with the Woodlawn, that it'll over time drive traffic to other streets where people avoid.
You know, my hunch is actually that it will not. And the reason I say that is because I think, y'all correct me if I'm wrong, Woodlawn's the only signal before, is it Fairfax? Is it Blair. Yeah. So none of those other streets have a signal, which I would guess might mean that's one reason why this street gets so much traffic and it's faster, because now I've got access to 21st. Otherwise, I can't pull out on the 21st, hardly. Yeah, and it's the first opportunity after 440 going the other direction. Right. But I don't know. But that's a guess. I can't tell you what's going to happen. You may see traffic go down there, but you know, this is a case where it is a grid pattern, and so you may see some of that. But my hunch is people don't drive far out of the way, you know, to avoid this. Some might. I mean,
if they're coming off 440, if they're coming from Green Hills or 440, they're going to turn left and cross traffic. So that would be less likely that maybe coming or come heading south where they turn right. They might.
Yeah, we see that signal. That signal often is a big magnet for traffic, you know, because it gives you safe access onto a busy street like Hillsborough Road, and so you know that's why you're seeing a lot of traffic here.
I got another question. So this gentleman was kind of, I think, hinting that, you know, maybe the radar signs or the, you know, reporting the speed limit to the driver sign might be less impactful. But the process is that you all are taking feedback, developing the plan along with NDOT, and then we'll have another meeting where you'll show more specifics, maybe more exact as to where they're going to go, right? And I guess I'm questioning, nowhere is there, it seems like we're moving towards speed cushion and not having any sort of enumerating of the different options, because you have the speed radar sign in your options, and I guess like Woodlawn won't exist, you know, it doesn't work for a traffic circle.
Right.
But I guess I'm wondering if yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
That's
The way we present, I guess the way I think about it is that's our recommendation. If you want slower speeds, we know they're effective. That's what we would recommend. If you all in this meeting, you all showed up tonight. If you all said, no, we'd rather see a plan with speed cushion, with radar signs, we'll develop a plan with radar signs. My professional opinion is those are less impactful for sure, but they're also less effective. So, I think that's where we.
Let's show of hands.
Not everybody's on
Yeah.
Woodlawn, right?
not in the neighborhood. Not everybody's on Woodlawn, and lots of people on Woodlawn aren't here.
Right.
And
Who all's on Woodlawn? Are you for cushions or for the, radar thing? Cushions.
I'm torn. I hate cushions, but I agree with your recommendation that they are the most effective.
Yeah. I wish we had more tools. We just have not invented additional tools.
I have a question. Who is the walking district some years back?
Right.
I mean, you were involved in that.
I was.
The 85th percentile of Woodlawn at the time was measured 41. And with lowering, it seems that lowering the speed limit actually, or maybe, so you get a sense of like what, and now it's 36, that's actually an artifact of measurement.
Right.
But any sense of why that would have changed? I mean, we didn't change anything physical on the sheet of science and speed limit.
Right. Now we didn't have any idea that as soon as that went, that went countywide, and that largely started with the project here and 2 other neighborhoods. And so we didn't have any expectation that all of a sudden miraculously everybody would start driving 25 miles an hour. We know better than that. What we do hope is that becomes the new normal. So Nashville neighborhoods 2 years ago, 3 years ago, the default was always 30 miles an hour. That goes back to when Metro Nashville was chartered. That was in our code. We changed it to 25 for residential streets, not necessarily for collectors like this one. We've seen that reduction. I'm hopeful that the speed limit plays a small part in that, and I think over time, as residents move in and move out, and if you come in now, you never knew it was 30, and you just figure the speed limit's always been 25, and I think the more turnover we see like that, hopefully over time, that becomes normal for people. So I think that's part of that consideration. So you might see, the longer that stays at 25, you might see some gradually lowering speeds. I don't know that it's not going to get here quickly.
I don't know, I live there. I feel like I'm like rolling roadblocks because people are just on my buffer because I'm doing 25. I'm not disagreeing at all. I was just like, I'm not disagreeing at all. Why that was on. I was just shocked when the number went up because I actually didn't do anything. But it seemed like it's still 36 and 25 zones.
These speeds, the way that data is collected, those tubes are out there for 24 to 48 hours. I could go out there right now and maybe I'd get 38, maybe I'd get 31. It's just, we do the best we can with the data we've got.
Question, other I don't know what the term is, non-traffic tools. And I'm wondering if you, in all the studies that you've poured over the years, is there any anecdotal evidence or otherwise that says, we know that more trees on the street, folks, do historic toppers on the street signs, do those make a difference? Do other non-signage, non-bump pumps, what else could we possibly do?
Trees are a big one. Anything that kind of visually narrows the road, that makes it not so wide open. Now, I would say this is not a wide open street. We showed a picture when we showed the pavement marking. That's a wide open street where you can see everything. You have a good amount of trees and vegetation. I think the more that you have, the better. The narrower the street, the better. Sidewalks help, especially people on the sidewalks help. Anytime there's a visual cue like that there's other activities, the closer houses are to the street, typically helps. You don't know when a ball's going to bounce across and the kid's going to be chasing it. All of those kind of things just kind of give people cues to drive slower. It's hard to have a list of, what are those things, but I think trees planted, outside of the right of way in your yard, but close to the street? Sir? Flashing blue lights, yeah.
There's something about, right? And that is physical change to the street. But I know in some towns they have them actually on the edge of the sidewalk where they're painted. And back to this business of the little toppers on street signs where it says.
Just like a historic looking sign.
Where it looks residential.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden the neighborhood looks more residential. Have you heard anything?
No, I can't think of any research that would have looked at that. It's not a bad thought. It's kind of interesting, but no, other than, a lot of times when you're in an area like that, there's also stuff that's just interesting to look at. Maybe it's a historic architecture, maybe it's a neat fence or whatever it is that also makes you want to slow down and take a look at where you are. So there may be something to that, but I've not seen just making a decorative sign, have any impact on speed. Good comment.
We talked a little bit about the process here. Can you go into a little more detail about?
Yeah, let's do. So I got a little information on that. Any other questions on that, or what we think is a concept at this point? And it's not like speak now, forever hold your peace. I'm going to give you our contact information. Feel free to sleep on it, think about it, talk to your neighbors about it, talk to your councilman. Y'all get us back whatever feedback you want to between now and the next time we meet, and we'll be glad to take that into consideration. But we are tonight at meeting 1. Again, this is probably a little small for you, but this next one is design. So we'll leave here tonight, and we'll go forth, as I hear it right now, on that 3-cushion plan. While we're out, if we want to kind of take some measurements, if we decide to back down to a sort of a radar sign, we can do that. Just got to have that in our back pocket. But for now, we'll keep going with that. Then when we're ready, after that's done, we'll get back with you, and Gil or somebody in NDOT will coordinate a second meeting just like this, where we'll come back in and we'll talk about what we've got, and some more of those, be able to answer some very detailed questions about where we're proposing these. And then talk to you more about the ballot process. That's a big topic, but I'll be glad to answer any questions you have tonight about that as well. Leaving that meeting 2, if there's consensus on the plan and y'all say, looks good, let's do it, we would then enter that online ballot process. And then if that passes, then we go order materials and go to construction. A little bit about, I didn't have that. I do like to talk a little bit about time frame of all of that. So we're scheduling meeting 2s. Y'all's meeting 2 won't probably be until late summer. I would say July, end of July-ish, just knowing the number of other projects that we've got, and we're kind of in the middle of all of that. Add to that 6 weeks. That's how long the ballot process takes. It closes at 6 weeks. That's a known. If it does pass, then we would order the materials. That's an 8 to 12 week process, just getting those materials in. It may be getting a little faster. That was kind of a COVID number, and there were some supply chain issues, as we all remember. So that may be getting a little better. Because NDOT does not stock those. Unfortunately, there's just not room to do that. So we order each of those custom to the project. Once those come in, getting it on the contractor schedule is about another 8 weeks. So we're late in the winter time. And I say all that to say, don't expect to see us out there this summer installing these things. Okay, we've got some ground to cover, and so I just want to make sure y'all have that expectation that the process is working. It's slower than any of us would like. We were talking about some of the delays and just some of the backlog, but just to set your expectation, that's kind of the time frame that we're working on at this point. Yes, sir.
What you're doing is working with Metro, competition.
We're kind of it. We have contract with Metro to do general traffic engineering. So Ellie's with Kimley Horn. We actually work for Kimley. Kimley Horn's a big international engineering firm. We're a small local firm. So we kind of split these projects up, and they lead some of them and we lead some of them, but we are the 2 firms that does traffic calming. They don't. They could. They have a contract. They could be engaged, but they're doing other stuff.
If we get a little bit to the ballot process,
sure.
So everybody's aware, because we made it, council made a change last summer, maybe at some point, because we were having some areas where it was like, basically it was, I want to say 70%, and it was 70% of the property owners. And that meant if people, especially, it tended to be non-owner occupied, like people renting out and not living on the property, were slow or turning in the response to non-existent.
Yeah.
And we had a process where people were going door to door, getting the signatures for approval or disapproval. And so we changed it to, like, it's I want to say 65?
66, two-thirds.
Two-thirds of the respondents. So if people aren't responding, they don't count again. So it's a little bit lower percentage, but it's a little bit lower percentage of those who respond. So if people aren't responding, they don't hold things up or count again. Seems like there's one other thing I was going to say about that. It has to be property owners, not like renters, not people who live there and will be impacted by it, but it has to be a property owner for some sort of legal reason.
And it's only the properties adjacent to this section of Woodlawn. So a minute ago when you said who's on Woodlawn, I don't know if that means y'all. Now you may be on a side street. You can be on a side street, but you'd need to be on the corner. You know what I mean? Your property line must abut Woodlawn that we're talking about in order to vote. So we love having you here. We love talking wider in the neighborhood about this. But when it comes to voting time, those are the people that will receive the ballot to vote.
The ballot, correct me if I'm wrong here, the ballot will have a link to go online and vote.
That's correct.
You have to mail back in.
That's correct. Yeah, and if you don't do that, you'd rather just pick up the phone and call. There's a phone number you can call, and they can take your vote that way.
So like Villager Apartments, that owner has one vote.
No. So, are they apartments?
They're condos.
If they're condos and they have owners, every owner will get a. I think they are. Because we sent them all notices to this meeting, and so everybody that owns, if you own outright your unit, you own the property in common. So we consider that to be you own on the street. You own a part of that property, and so we do ballot all of those people.
Susan and I live on the other side of Natchez. That means we won't have a ballot.
That's right.
And that's why you just need to have one more.
We'll try. We'll certainly try to make that case. And it doesn't hurt for that to come. If you want to write in and give us that feedback, that would not hurt. And that goes for anything. Any other thoughts you have? Let me put my information up. So if you can read that, you're welcome to come up afterwards. I'm Jeff Hammond in the green below. Above me is Gil Thomas. Gil is actually the Metro employee that manages this program. Very responsive, great guy. So feel free to email him or me or both if you think of other questions or comments. Feel free to get in touch with us.
When I was doing introduction, I was not pointing out that Hillsborough West End Neighborhood Association is one that officially did the applications, numerous applications. All the ones in the map that you saw, most of those were done by Hillsborough West End Neighborhood Board of Directors. And Jenny Chang and Miriam Mansfield are co-chairs, and Lee Benson is the street chair, and they are instrumental in doing this for the neighborhood.
I want to add, you can also fulfill, we have always sending in applications and neighbors, and the criteria has changed, but neighbors also can send them in, right?
Correct. That's 4 different properties. So it's 4 people that say, yes, we're interested in pursuing this, but it has to be, it can't be 2 married couples. It has to be 4 different properties in the section.
Yeah, because I don't know if y'all knew this, but most neighborhoods aren't as organized as you guys. So a lot of neighborhoods don't even have any kind of association. We don't want to lock them out just because of that. They can band together enough to talk about it and put in an application. And we get a lot of those. Yes, ma'am.
The condos on the corner. Does that mean if there are 50 people living in 50 different condos, they have 50 votes?
so every household will get a vote, only one per household. You and your husband don't get, you got to agree. We're not getting in the middle of that. Right. Each household would get a vote. Yes, ma'am. Just something I was going to say about that. Oh, if an owner owns more than one of those condo units, they only get to vote once. So somebody may own 10 of those units and rent them out, they only get one vote. That makes sense. So each owner, no matter how many properties you own on the street, you get one. We have some corporations that basically own the whole street in some cases. Sure.
Saying that it's highly unlikely that the block that we live on would be included. 1 to 10.
We have wide support on that.
We have not had a lot of success changing the limits of a project once we get to this stage. Now, that might change, but I would certainly ask and raise the issue. It makes sense to me, but I don't want to.
From the other side, it's just your little section, that little half or whatever.
Yeah.
People see.
What if we're able to compromise with them and say maybe we don't do a cushion, but maybe we do a radar sign in that little curve part? I mean, maybe, I don't know. We'll try and think through. Is there something we can do that's, different on that one little segment, just to have something there? Because I agree. I mean, we're connecting two projects that have been selected because of their data, and just because that we didn't have data on that part, we're not doing anything about it. So I mean, I think it's very reasonable to look at. We'll just
you keep listing radar signs. Do you have any frequency of how often somebody is actually standing there or taking radar? Because I see those signs, and it's rare that you ever see somebody actually taking the radar.
Yeah, that's not how they. So the way they work is there's a radar built into the sign. It's not ticketing. It's not doing any kind of enforcement whatsoever. Let me find the picture. Oops. So this is a solar panel. It's solar panel. There's no wiring going to it. And what that solar panel is doing right down somewhere in this sign, you really can't even see it. I guess it's in the black. There's a sensor there. It's a radar sensor. And so as you drive up to it, it's measuring your speed, and it's just showing you your speed. It's not sending that data. It's not going to the police or anything else. It's just saying your speed is 20 miles an hour or 40 miles an hour or 72 miles an hour. And that's all it's doing. Now we can collect that data. NDOT can do that, but we don't know who's speeding. We have no idea. All we know is 17% of the people were going faster. We can get metrics off of it, but in order to collect that data, but that's what those do.
I would expect that is effective for people who just are going faster and it's not spacing out, not thinking about how fast they're going. They see it, they're like, oh, I need to slow down.
Yeah.
Whereas the other is more of a physical, it's going to impact me if I don't slow down, rather than skills.
But people that go down the street every day,
They may not care.
they see it.
Yeah.
They know nothing's
Yeah.
going to happen.
Amen. Mm-hmm.
Well, if you have an extra couple cushions you don't need, just sort of over our way.
If they happen to fall off the back of the truck or whatever.
I tell you, I think we probably could get them.
Have a black market on speed cushion. Not careful. Yeah, the armadillos too. Well, again, thank you all for being here. Let me show one more slide in case just other information, general. That's the link to the website. But again, just Google Metro Traffic Calming. But all that technology stuff, there's no shortage of information. They've done a great job. And whoever said it's right. This program has evolved as we had issues like, we used to ask you to go door to door, and you felt so bad for these people. They're out there, you guys are organized, and it's kind of a nice walk going door to door. But a lot of neighborhoods, it was a real crucible. We were asking them to run the gauntlet to try and get these people to sign up. It was just a real hardship. So we've made adjustments, tried to streamline the process, tried to make it easier on people to engage the city, with these requests. And I think that the staff that's there now has done a tremendous job. And then that really, you'll really see that if you go to that website, a lot of tools and resources there to give you more information. So again, thank you all for being here. We'll be in touch with another meeting, and feel free to reach out in the meantime if you have need to.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Hey, Jeff, let me ask you one thing.
Sure. Let me cut this recording off real quick.
I wanted to see, what I wanted to see on your map is 24th Avenue over here.
Okay, I'll show it to you. Let me just stop this.
So it's